There are a lot of different settings that you need to be aware of to film and edit good footage, so let's walk through some of the basics in this video. White balance is very important to make sure your footage looks like the right color. You need to make sure you have your white balance good in pre-production and post-production. First, in pre-production, what you want to make sure to do is on your camera, to set white balance, you can do this by clicking the WB button on the camera, then go through each option to see which one looks most realistic. Inside the school, I usually use fluorescent mode. When in post-production, you can then use the Lumix color setting in Premiere to get the right white balance. The best way to adjust white balance is to use the eyedropper tool and then click something in the clip that is white. This will then make your clip look a lot better and a lot more realistic. But the eyedropper will not always work fully, which is when we have to switch to manually changing things in Premiere using color correction. In the same menu in editing, you can manually change things like temperature, which will make your clip more blue or orange, tint, which will make your clip more red or green, and saturation, which describes the intensity of the color in your clip. So you can make your clip either black and white or turn the color intensity very high. Alright, we talked so much about color correction, so let's do a lightning round on things to do in pre-production and post-production. Make sure to adjust exposure before filming so you don't have too much or too little light in your clip. You can do this by going to settings and going to exposure, in which you'll have 4 options. Auto, which is represented by P, aperture priority mode, which is represented by A, shutter speed priority, which is represented by S, and full manual, which is represented by M. Once you select the right exposure mode, you can always make more changes using the touchscreen. If you click the video icon on the side and the +/- button, you can manually adjust exposure. When in Premiere, you can adjust exposure using the Lumix color tab by either putting the exposure tab up or down to make the clip lighter or darker. For both highlights and shadows, you can go to the video settings and scroll down to highlights and shadows in pre-production and select which option on the camera suits you best. When in Premiere though, you can adjust highlights and settings in Lumix color by using the highlights and shadows slider. For contrast, you can go to video settings in your camera and click photo style. In this section, you can change many different settings, but one of the ones you can change is contrast. When in Premiere, you can just change the contrast by going to the Lumix color tab and using the contrast slider. For changing brightness on the clip, you can do it in many ways. You can do it through exposure, ISO, or highlights and shadows, both in pre-production and post-production. By now you should know the basics on how to make a clip look good on the Panasonic Lumix G7.